original plan was to invite and have a short address from the Honourable Senator Arthur Sitadidis, Minister for Industry, Innovation and Science. But as many of you are aware, he is currently on sick leave from the Australian government and very much regrets the fact that he was unable to attend this historic Congress and this lunch. And so he sends his apologies, and I'm sure we all send him our very best wishes. So it is my great pleasure now to introduce again the Honourable Jay Weatherill, Premier of the state of South Australia and one of our key supporters in our new initiative to promote the South Australian space industry and more broadly the Australian space industry. So without further ado, I'll call upon the Premier to say a few words to you.
Thank you, Michael, and can I also begin by acknowledging a range of distinguished guests here today, including our Minister for Defence and Space Industries, a newly created portfolio, Minister Hamilton Smith, the Leader of the Opposition is here from South Australia, Chief Minister from the ACT and Northern Territories are both here, Ministers, Parliamentarians, Ambassadors from across Australia and the world, and President of the International Astronautical Federation, Dr. Jean-Yves Le Gall, and also Johann Dietrich Werner, Director General of the European Space Agency. Ladies and gentlemen, the English astrophysicist Fred captured the enigmatic nature of space when he said the following: space isn't really remote at all. It's only an hour's drive away in your car if you could go straight up. Space is actually well within our grasp. It's something that we've been exploring and utilising for decades now. And as I mentioned in the opening ceremony, we've been involved in this endeavour from our early days. The Woomera Rocket Range, which is in the far north of our state, was established back in 1947, and it proved terrifically successful and popular, becoming in the 1950s the busiest launch centre after Cape Canaveral in Florida. 20 years after its inception, as we heard, Woomera was the site from which we launched the Australian-built RESAT-1 satellite, and it helped put Australia on the map, making us just the third nation in the world after the US and Soviet Union to launch a satellite into orbit from its own territory. And we marked the 50th anniversary of that event this year. But this occasion gives us pause to reflect on not only where we've been, but where we're going as an industry. And space does remain something which is within our grasp. The task of harnessing it, of using it as a force for the common good, and a means by which to improve our world, continues to be challenging. So in this environment, the imperative for cooperation has never been greater. And one of the wonderful things about this conference is the way in which we've gathered the world together in this space, at this time, to pursue this endeavour together. So in line with this, I welcome the European Space Agency hosting of this luncheon. And I also look forward to hearing from Professor Werner about how we might work even more closely together in the future. What's probably not widely known is that South Australia's partnership with the European space community dates back to 1962. This was when Britain and 5 other countries formed the European Launcher Development Organisation, or ELDO as it was commonly known. This in turn led to the development of a non-military launch vehicle using the British Blue Streak as its first stage and launching it from Woomera. As a result, Woomera became the second home to a large number of European scientists and engineers, and it's nice to see a number of people return here to Adelaide to really get back in touch with those historical links. Indeed, this is a shared history, South Australia's history, and indeed the history of the European Space Agency can trace its origins back to this project. As for the European Space Agency, its influence on Australian space activities has been significant. We see it in the agreement between the Australian Government and the European Space Agency reached in 2011, for a cooperative space vehicle tracking program. There's also a close link between the agency and our Southern Hemisphere Space Studies program, which is conducted annually by the University of South Australia in collaboration with the International Space University. The ESA has contributed scholarship support and expert lecturers to the program, and this is something that we really welcome. Since the program started in 2011, 14 students from 7 European countries have taken part. And in 2018, my government will be awarding full scholarships to 5 deserving young South Australians to attend the Live in Space education program. This state, as you've heard, is a strong supporter of space collaboration at both home and abroad. We've recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of the Australian Capital Territory, and this afternoon I'll be joining others in signing an expanded memorandum of understanding that involves the Northern Territory. Collaboration among Australian jurisdictions and forming partnerships internationally will be a critical factor in building a globally competitive space industry, learning from one another, taking the best technologies from different countries, bringing them together. This is how we'll reach a new frontier in space. But in order to do this effectively, each country needs to be internally well organised and coordinated. And this is why today's announcement of the formation of a national space agency is such an important announcement. It's also great to see here Senator Kim Carr representing the federal opposition, who has made a similar commitment from the Labor Party. This means that both major parties in this country are utterly committed to this proposition, which demonstrates that it has every chance of success. But in South Australia, we're not waiting for the national government to put in place these arrangements. We're fostering our own local industry through the establishment of Australia's first hub dedicated to expanding the space sector. This new entity, the South Australian Space Industry Centre, will practically foster innovation, research and entrepreneurship. It will support South Australia's emerging space industry by providing grant funding each year to young space entrepreneurs, along with new and existing space startups. And it complements another move that we made last week, which was to create an extended ministry, the first in the nation, led by Minister Hamilton Smith, covering both defence and space industries. South Australia was the first jurisdiction in this country to produce a space strategy for industry, and the new centre will take on the responsibility for carrying it out. Importantly, the centre will work closely with our members of our thriving local space sector, many of whom are exhibiting their wares at the Congress this week. At least 60 organisations with space-related expertise with the potential to apply current expertise to the space supply chain will have been identified in this state and are available to talk to you during the course of this week. There's an enormous pool of talent available. Our new centre perfectly positions this state to be part of any Australian national space agency that will emerge in the coming period. The centre also promises to improve our capacity to form partnerships with international space organisations, such as your host this lunchtime, the European Space Agency. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you'll agree that we've had a wonderful opening to this Congress. What I found most powerful was the way in which our young people, our children, were front and centre in providing the entertainment to you. We also demonstrated to you the deep and enduring relationship that our First Peoples, our Aboriginal peoples, have with this country. I think what we're showing to you is that you're incredibly welcome in our beautiful city and state. Your quest for knowledge and to apply that knowledge for the benefit of humankind is something that inspires us. The fact that you're all here with all of your talents and expertise honours us, and you're so welcome, and we believe that this is just the start of something very exciting for not only our state, our nation, but the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce the Director General of the European Space Agency, Dr. Jan Werner. Anyone who's been involved in space, even for a short time, knows that Dr. Werner is one of space's most famous personalities, and I always look forward to your addresses, Jan, and I'm sure we're not going to be disappointed today. So please welcome Dr. Berner.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, of course the first thing is always how to welcome all of these distinguished guests. There are ministers, premiers, there are members of parliament, there are heads of agencies and all of this. But I think what all joins you to bring together is Friends of Space. So I make it easy. Friends of Space, welcome to this lunch. And I will now, and this will be just about 2 hours or something like that, a little bit explain what our concerns about and our ideas about the ESA Australia cooperation. And you see here it says Space 4.0. This is already strange because what is Space 4.0? But before that, I would like really to welcome also that all of us can be here. And I would like to say thank you that we can be here in Australia. And as I learned, whenever you are here, you should have a very formal, but I like it very much, a very special sentence for welcome. And this is written over here. I hope it will work. We would like to acknowledge the Kaurna people and their elders past. They are the traditional owners of the land on which we stand. So I hope that all of you understand this. Not only the English, but also the contents, and I think, thank you very much also for giving me this sentence for presenting it over here. So you see the picture is part of this land, we are here. I have another part, this is not the land, but this is the Great Barrier Reef, another very important thing which already shows us also how important it is to make climate change not something which has to worry us, but we have to look into the future to secure our planet. Now, Space 4.0 must have a Space 1.0, a Space 2.0, a Space 3.0. Space 1.0 is astronomy. Still a very strong scientific activity, so very clear. Space 2.0 is, okay, now this is Space 2.0 is, I go back because there is a small movie in it and it should move, okay. Space 2.0 is a race in space between the superpowers, the United States of America and the Soviet Union at that time, and we all know the story. Both had their success, of course, with Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin over there, and Lunokhod over here, and so this was a very interesting time of race in space. And at that time, the Europeans were thinking a little bit different. Not looking for a race in space, but they were looking in cooperation in space. Very strange enough. So there were two organizations. One was the European Space Research Organization, and the other one, the European Launch and Development Organization. We heard already about that. 1964. And at that time, Australia was part of ELDO as a special member. And there, I bring now the pictures to all what you heard already this morning. So this is ELDO at Woomera. The Woomera facility was used for the first rockets. And also it was not the most successful story of Europe in space, but it was, as we see here, Australia and some other member states from Europe working together at the Woomera launch site. And of course, we heard it today also, the WRESAT was launched there with an American rocket, but from Australia, a very successful, already a successful scientific mission because, yes, it was organized by a weapon research organization, but it was purely devoted to atmospheric science, so a very fascinating mission. Again, I said these two organizations existed and they were merged towards the European Space Agency since 1975. And for all lawyers in the room, I can say, just take the convention from 1975 if you want to learn something, how to write a convention. Because this is still valid, it is still a very nice book, you can read it as if it would be written today or tomorrow. So it's very short, very clear messages, how to organize governance, for instance, is a very short chapter in that one, and it's still working. And we have now 22 member states, plus Canada, as an associate member, so we were grown very much, but still this convention is working as in the first days. Now, what we did since ever then is, of course, many different types of cooperation. For instance, in Earth observation, we were cooperating very strongly with Australia, with different entities in Australia for different satellites. There were some special payloads developed over here, and so the contribution of Australia was always very important also for these different missions. Now, this was the step towards Space 3.0. Space 3.0, I call it some steps for global cooperation and for space applications. So why only steps? Because you see over here in the International Space Station we have the Americans, the Russians, the Japanese, the Europeans and the Canadians. But I heard there are some more countries in the world. I heard about that. So there are some missing, and therefore it was the first step for global cooperation, and I think we can go even further. And this is something which comes now in the future. But even in this case, in these times of Space 3.0, there was a strong cooperation with Australia and Europe, for instance, for the automated transfer vehicle launch tracking, which was done here from Australia, from the University of South Australia. As I said, we have 22 member states right now, today, 20 out of which are at the same time member states of the European Union. So ESA is an intergovernmental organization. So therefore, for instance, Brexit does not affect us directly. Unfortunately, I have to say, the Brits decided to leave the European Union, but they at the same time decided to stay in the European Space Agency. And we have some experience with that, also with Switzerland and Norway, so therefore we can handle that. As I said, cooperating state is Canada, associated state is Slovenia, and we have a lot of cooperation agreements. There is not Australia on this map, unfortunately, but I will come back to that later. So ESA today, as I said, it was created on this convention of 1975, is doing Earth observation, we are doing navigation, telecommunication, science and exploration, we are developing launchers and re-entry vehicles, we are doing testing, satellite operations, planetary defense, and the right-hand side should say we are also doing industrial policy with our special tools. We call it geo-return, that the member states pay and they get some return in their country. We are also doing the support of national interests in building up of industry and academia in the respective member state. Still we have strong cooperation, and this is now Copernicus. Copernicus is a program which is mainly financed by the European Union, but also partly by the European Space Agency, and there is a strong cooperation again by using the data of Copernicus also here in Australia, as our idea of using data from Copernicus is free and open data access. And we have still the cooperation concerning tracking and receiving of data. New Norcia, there we have an antenna, and I have the pleasure at the end of this week to visit this site for the first time. Now, it was also used, for instance, for the mission Rosetta to the comet Churyumov-Gerasimenko, and this picture I'm always using, especially for the members of parliament and politicians, because they are always asking, why are you going to a comet? What is the benefit to go to a comet? Why? To understand whether there is water or any other organic materials on a comet. What is it good for daily life? For me, curiosity is a driver enough for space, but not for each and everyone. And especially if politicians have to come back to the country, they have to say, where is the return of investment? And I can tell you this is a good example where even a totally scientific-oriented mission gets a return to the life on Earth. I don't need it, curiosity is enough for me, because inspiration and fascination is already good for humankind. But in this case, this comet is dark as charcoal. Dark as charcoal, and you need a special camera to make a difference between the very dark and ultra dark and black and ultra black. So different shades of grey, more than 50 I can tell you. So these shades of grey, and the camera on board of Rosetta can make a difference between these different shades of grey. And therefore some smart people were saying, okay, why not using this technology on Earth? And it's now used for forest fire detection. So the camera is looking above trees, and if something comes out of the forest, let's say some gray something, then the camera can decide, is it smoke, is it vapor, is it fog, or what is it? So, and there are hundreds of these cameras produced. Maybe also you can use them in Australia for bushfire early detection. And also Cassini, well, I hope you have heard about the final showdown of Cassini last week. So this one is really also where the station here in Australia was used to get the signals and the tracking. Now, I said Space 3.0, now there is Space 4.0, and Space 4.0 is based on the following ideas. The change of motivation, so it's not race in space any longer. There is a change of actors. I mean, I was reading today in one of your newspapers, Australia is now entering into the race in space. I hope you are not. I hope you are looking for cooperation. So different actors, it's more than 70 spacefaring nations worldwide, so a totally different landscape. We have different contents, it's not just one or the other, it's a broad variety, Earth observation, telecommunication, navigation, and all of this. The roles are different in the future, meaning the space agencies are not just the funding agencies. We understand that we are also enablers, facilitators, brokers of space activities. And then new technologies, I mean 3D printing is just one of them. Others come maybe from dark energy, dark matter, quantum entanglement and so on. And therefore commercialization, spin in, spin off, participation with citizens to understand what are the citizens expecting from us. To give also information, innovation, interaction and inspiration to space. To foster cooperation worldwide, because from space you cannot see all these so important earthly borders. If you look from space, you didn't see the borders, and this is a very good sign to cooperate in space beyond earthly crisis, earthly borders. Jobs and growth with space, digitalization is of course coming in, and what we need is flexibility. So this is Space 4.0, a new era of space which we can use. And I was happy to see then when I was checking what I can present over here. Also, Australia had some experience in the past. Now there was on the 18th of April saying Australia's back in the satellite business with a new launch. So fine, so you are back. You never left it, by the way, but it's fine to see this headline in the newspaper. And maybe we need you also in the future. I will just give you one example. Not only maybe we need you, but I hope we can cooperate. These, for launcher tracking, you were always active here in Australia. From the different status of Ariane 4, now we have the full family with Vega, Soyuz, Ariane 5, 2 types. These are the current launches we are launching from French Guiana, and of course tracking is with Australian help. In the future we have a new family of launchers, including Ariane 6, 64, 62 and Vega C. So, and I think this is a very fruitful possible solution in the future. However, there is a discussion worldwide, and this is always the question of reusability. I'm not that much convinced that this is the only one and only solution, but maybe we have to look into what are the possibilities of different types of reusability. Not only one and only solution, but different types. And in this respect, I heard and I saw that you are also in Australia developing something. It might be this is a good idea to look into it, how to cooperate. So this is the message of today. You all got it. Australia will finally get a long-awaited National Space Agency with Adelaide set to play a major part. Congratulations, this is very fine. Why not use it also for solving one of our major issues? And now taking Australian history, heritage, new technology of rockets, and looking for a reusable solution. That could be one, and I have to one. Yeah, it's a strange shape, but it guaranteed will come back. So Australian Space Agency. So, thank you very much. I want you for ESA, and have a nice day.
Suggesting our new logo for our new Australian Space Agency. I think we've got that problem solved right away. So it's been a great pleasure to hear from you and from the Premier today. And all I need to do now is to wish you well, to remind you that the Heads of Space Agency's plenary starts soon, and enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the Congress. Thank you.